Okay, good morning, good evening, and welcome to the Farmland LP webinar series. Today's topic is on the impact of weather and climate on agriculture investment. I'm Michelle Ewert, Director of Capital Markets and Investor Relations, and we really appreciate you joining us today. Over the next 20 to 25 minutes, we're going to highlight weather's changing role in farming, discuss some crop impacts, and end with the potential investment themes and opportunities. Please do click on the bottom of the screen if you have a question, and we'll do our best to address this at the end. For those that don't know us, Farmland LP has a 15-year history of converting conventional farmland to organic and regenerative farmland. Our mission is to provide both a compelling financial return and positive impact on the environment. Before I turn it over to our founder and managing partner, Craig Wichner, I'd like to quickly introduce a couple of our team members. We have Tom Sullivan, who is our managing director and head of our investor relation and capital markets team. And we also have Owen Doherty on the call today. He is a vice president, and he works a lot with our farm and fund management teams on portfolio management, acquisitions, and financial analysis. With that, I would like to hand it over to Craig Wichner.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for being interested in this topic. My name is Craig Wichner. I founded Farmland LP about 15 years ago. I have had a long career in building companies, venture capital and private equity, managing cash flowing real estate, and again, been doing this full time for the past 15 years. We started Farmland LP with a focus on understanding the impact of climate change on agriculture. That partially comes from my background. I have a degree in biochemistry and molecular biology and a minor in economics. And so we'll touch on the science just a little bit, but really focus on the business side for the half hour. Again, quick overview on Farmland LP. We've been doing this for 15 years. We're the largest farmland manager focused on organic and regenerative agriculture. We have an 11-person fund management team and a 45-person farmland management team that we've built over the past few years. With real expertise on farmland management. We have farming operations in 3 states: Northern California and Oregon, farming about 16,000 acres today. The focus for today's presentation is really focusing on climate change and farmland from the perspective of investor. We're going to be focusing on the historical data and scientific findings, very high confidence scientific projections, and how climate will impact and has impacted agriculture and food production, as well as farmland investing. We're really not going to be talking about low or high scenarios or politics or solutions in this particular presentation. We'll cover first the investor perspective on the science, then look at the farming impact, then specific examples of crop impacts in the rearview mirror, things that have already happened, and then we'll look forward at the strategic landscape and investment opportunities. To kick this off, I wanted to get us kind of grounded in a good perspective here, which is that we're just a little ball flying through space that's actually at the temperature of about 458 degrees negative Fahrenheit, about 3 degrees above absolute zero. The moon varies over a 450 degree range, depending on if it's in the sun, and in the darkness averages about 410 degrees negative. We happen to be at this perfect, beautiful temperature of 59 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees Celsius. And the question is why? Moon is so close. Why are we so different? The key lies in the atmosphere. And CO2 is the key component that we're talking about here. You can see visually that CO2 is there. That's about 0.04% of the components of the atmosphere. And you may say, oh, that's a small amount. Visually, you can see how much that is. I like to compare it to actually having a drink or two. That gets, if you have a drink or two of wine or beer, that'll get your blood alcohol level up to about 0.04%, and you'll feel that. So that's an example of what CO2 is providing. And on the right-hand side, you'll see that CO2 captures really that infrared radiation, that warmth radiation. And if you're on the ground and you look up and you actually measure which molecules are reflecting back, it's absolutely predominantly CO2. We have this is incredibly, this is 1996 data. We're very clear that CO2 is providing most of the radiation capture and radiating it back to the Earth as well. Now, this is CO2 and temperature data, and it's been going up, and we'll talk a little bit about it. But as an investor, I want you to think about CO2 essentially as the money supply in the economy, and then the temperature as the stock market, as the market performance. And if we look at the money supply, or the CO2, you see that really from 1960 up till today, it's been growing quite strongly. And in fact, today, we are adding about 38 billion tons worth of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere per year. Now, that carbon dioxide that was already there really is that kind of nice warm blanket for us, but we keep adding more and more money supply or carbon dioxide to that each year. When you look at the temperature, here's where the stock market is basically going up on that, and it highly correlates with the amount of money supply there. This chart I want to emphasize was put out in 2017, assuming the Paris Accords were successful. And so in 2017, we were about 1 degree warming, and we thought that we wouldn't get to 1.5 degrees warming until 2040. That's what the dominant models said. And then, yeah, so what actually happened was that we hit 1.5 degrees warming last year in 2023. So between 2017 and 2023, basically the models, the high degree confidence model and even the low degree confidence model, were just wrong. And so this is one of the reasons why we see climate change really as very clearly happening and accelerating. And it's at the point where your investment decisions will be impacted by the climate, in our view, over the next 5 to 10 years. So now is really the time to be investing according to the strategy. Let's look at the weather's changing role in farming, and particularly sunshine, dirt, and water. Just to get you oriented to agriculture, I wanted to show a map of where the crops currently grow and kind of why they grow there. So map of the US, obviously, this is going to be a US-centric presentation. We're not going to cover the globe. There's different implications there. But just looking at the US and the #1 crop that grows in each county, you see that corn is grown primarily in the upper Midwest, and that's the most subsidized crop. It's kind of the most easiest crop to grow for the most profit. If, however, it's too hot or too wet to grow corn in certain areas, then soy is the next best crop. If you don't have the water necessary for soy, then you'll grow wheat there. And if it's too hot for that, then you grow cotton or sugarcane or something else, as they do down here. If it's really hot, you'll grow oranges down here. Now, the problem with the Midwest is that you get hard freezes. If you don't get the hard freezes, but you have good climate weather, you can grow grapes or vegetables or other things like that. So just a very quick overview, an orientation on where crops grow today. And fundamentally, what drives that is the farmland, which we break down into sunshine, dirt, and water. So let's start with sunshine. Sunshine is the growing climate. And here's up here is the map of the plant hardiness zones as they exist today. And pretty much this represents kind of, is there a freeze there? And we'll get back to it, but Florida recently, actually Florida about 2000, kind of lost the freeze zone. It went from a temperate zone to a tropical zone. It doesn't have a winter freeze. We'll get back to why that's important later. But if you look at the climate models and you're looking at temperature, both heat and humidity in this case, but if you look at Illinois, for example, as a state, from 1990, the average temperature before 1990 was the benchmark here. But in these warming scenarios, the mid-century and then, well, the mid-level warming and high-level warming that's happening will basically turn Illinois into the temperatures of modern-day Dallas and Houston. That has very significant impacts for the kind of crops that they can grow there. Might be growing corn today, but they're going to be switching over to wheat, cattle, and potentially cotton, according to these climate change trends. So while the climate is shifting, the soils are not. The soils are anchored in place. This is a map of high quality soils and where they're located. And what the dark blue is the highest quality soils. Green is mid-level, red is poor quality soils. And these soils only exist in specific areas. As the climate changes, you might have a great growing conditions for a certain crop where crops are grown today, but where that climate zone moves up to may not have the proper soils that's necessary in order to grow those crops. Third component is water. Water is a complicated topic. That includes surface water, groundwater, precipitation. It also includes humidity. It can be too much water, like a flood, or too little water, like a drought. And in one of the key changes with climate change is just you're going to have more extremes and they'll last for longer. That's a key trend here. But another change is the timing of the precipitation or the humidity. And not all additional moisture. So you see, for example, the Midwest receiving additional moisture late in the season. You might say, great, they're getting more water. The problem is, for example, with corn, is that after the corn finishes growing, then they need to dry it down. They need to get to about 14% moisture and in order to basically be able to store it and sell it. The problem is this humidity and this rain is coming during the period of time when they would want to dry down that corn. This results in increased fungal growth. And fungicides are very toxic, very expensive, and it really ruins the crop if they can't get that moisture down where they need it to go. This is one of the significant risks in the Midwest for corn growing. So in addition to the physical aspects of water, because you need both physical access to water, you also need water rights. And that includes, so you're looking at irrigated versus non-irrigated ground or rain-fed ground. If you do have water rights, are they senior or junior? Where do they fall in that perspective? And what's the physical security of that river or aquifer from a legal perspective as well? This is a complex topic. We'll do a whole nother session just on water. When you kind of add these up, it creates a risk model. Now, this is a model actually from the HIP. It's a HIP climate threat resilience rating. They've added 16 different factors together, some of them agriculture, some of them not agriculture, and related to overall resilience. And this is the model that they come up with. If you want to talk with them about it, they'd be glad to talk with you. But it does show some kind of general trends. Basically, the South and Southeast have some pretty serious issues. In the Pacific Northwest, you actually have some positive impacts as well. But with the changes, so just looking at the USDA, they're expecting a 12 to 29% decrease in agricultural yields due to temperature and moisture changes by 2050. We think this underrepresents the case, and we think that there are very significant changes coming. We think they're coming more quickly than that, and we think that, we still have to grow the same amount of crops, just on less and different land. So it's going to be really a scenario where there's going to be losers and there's going to be winners, and you need to start investing today for that. Let's give some very specific examples of crop impacts. So overall, plants have evolved where they are over hundreds and thousands of years. And here are some of the basic processes that are really involved in growing a crop. It applies to all crops, annual crops or permanent crops. We're specifically using permanent crop examples like tree fruits or vine crops, et cetera, here. But starting out, a lot of plants need a certain amount of cold units in order to produce buds on them. And then the time that those buds actually flower is determined by how much warming they get in the spring. Once those buds open, there's a limited period of time, usually about 2 weeks, for it to be warm enough for the bees to be out and about in order to pollinate those plants. Then you need a good amount of heat in order for sugar development for those particular crops, but you don't want too much heat because you really want the good flavors that develop through long-term ripening on that. You need just the right amount of water in order to grow these crops. And then it can't get too hot before those crops are really ready for harvest. So a lot of complexity, and this varies, and the conditions vary for each individual crop. The first example we're going to go over is wine grapes, something we're all generally familiar with. And if you look at the average growing season or growing season temperature for the different varietals of wine grapes, this chart basically shows each of these smaller lines is 2 degrees Celsius on there. So we're at about 1.5 degrees warming. The United States is actually warming faster than that, so we've already exceeded some of these ranges. But basically, 2 degrees warming in the wine growing regions, you can see will move some of these crops out of their current range of production. And so what you're seeing, for example, in Napa is that they're well known for Cab Sauvignon, which is an old world grape. Well, there's a lot of vineyards that are being torn out with the cooler season varietals or warm season varietals and replanted with Spanish varietals, the hot season varietals. If it continues to warm, which all the projections say we expect, they're going to be growing table grapes and raisins over 2 degrees. And more than that, there's going to be more serious problems. Let's talk about why that's an issue here. This next chart looks at the optimal ripening of a grape. And there's 4 main components that make for good wine, and it's balance of sugar and acid and flavor and color of the wine. And when you have a normal or an optimal ripening period, the grapes develop their color over a 4-month period. The sugars ramp up nicely, the acidity goes down, and it gets just in this perfect balance of acid to sugar ratio, and the flavor peaks at just the right time and you can harvest it. Well, if it's too hot, then the grape color isn't going to have time to ripen in time. The ideal acid to sugar ratio is going to be off. It's going to happen early, before the flavors have a chance to develop. So you're either going to have nice acid to sugar ratio, but no flavor, or ideal flavor, but way too much sugar on there and not enough acid. So this is what's happening to wine grapes, which are kind of the canary in the coal mine, but it's happening with other crops as well. The second example is oranges in Florida. And I mentioned that Florida basically in the early part of this century kind of lost its hard freeze during the winter. And when you lose that hard freeze, that's one of the key things that kills pests, agricultural pests, because many of the tropical pests that are there, they don't have winters, and it's just a vicious year-round competition and a lot of evolution for pests attacking plants in the tropical region. Well, they get up to where it's cold and they're really not happy. They die off. Well, around 2004, right here, Florida lost its freeze, and a pest called doesn't matter, citrus greening disease basically started infecting these orange trees and killed them very quickly. And this is an example of what can happen in agriculture with climate change. So they went from 250 million boxes of oranges produced a year to now it's right around 20 million boxes of orange production per year. The orange production in Florida really got wiped out by this pest. So, and as we continue warming, this frost line is going to continue going north, and that's going to be continued issues. Okay, strategic investment landscape. I told you we're going through this quick, just trying to give you a flavor of it. You're welcome to ask questions. We're glad to talk more about this stuff. There's a ton of examples on this thing. I actually have 59 slides on here, but I'm only going to get to just a handful more here. Strategic investment landscape. The big picture around farmland is that the cropland acres, even without climate change, the cropland acres are shrinking in the U.S. While the U.S. population continues to grow, it generally takes around 1 acre to feed one person on average. The U.S. is in a great spot today of being a food exporting country. We think that's going to change with climate change. You're going to lose, again, the USDA expects to lose 12 to 29% of crop yields by 2050. We think that's going to be higher, and we think it's going to happen earlier than that. So whatever farmland is left, we're going to need to produce more food on that land. Key adaptation strategies. So right now you may be feeling a little bit concerned, and there are things that you can do today in order to adapt to some of these situations. And the key component that we've been doing for 15 years, and it's why it's a core part of our strategy from the beginning, is focusing on organic and regenerative practices to increase soil health and increase the ecosystem resilience for us growing the food. And so enhanced soil carbon sequestration is a key part of that. Soil carbon holds more water. So when there's a drought, there's more water reserves in the soil. And also when it floods, there's too much rain, water can actually infiltrate and flow through the land easily rather than just pooling up and running off and taking the soil away with it. You need multiple crop rotations for improved soil health. Higher yields. Monocropping really is the opposite of what we're talking about here. Diverse pollinator habitat. Remember I talked about the pests that are coming in. Having habitat for other insects that eat other insects is an essential component to have on the farm, really helpful for dealing with pests. The chemistry is not going to be able to save people in time. It didn't save the orange industry. We also believe that you need to build hands-on expertise. You need to plan on a 10-year climate change scenarios, and you need large scale for a number of factors here to just dealing with kind of the business issues, the diversification of the different kind of crops. But we do think that the smaller farmers are going to have issues. The counterpoint to that is that, for example, the U.S. crop insurance system is very strong. A lot of money goes out. We can show you money. I think it's about $19 billion over the past 5 years has gone out to farmers for climate-related issues. That's not the total payouts. Those are just the ones that the USDA identified as climate-related issues. We think that the crop insurance is going to increase. It's a fundamental need for the government to make sure that there's enough food produced each year, no matter what, no matter the climate impacts. And so we think that that crop insurance, particularly in the U.S. farmland, is going to continue to be more and more valuable and a key tool. So opportunities for investors, with change comes opportunity. So again, we have our investor hat on here. Number one thing is farmland assets. So the growing regions are changing, and they're changing. One of the reasons why we're having this presentation after 15 years is that we see changes happening right now, and we see people being a little bit more aware of these issues, and it's affecting our strategies, and we see it affecting actually even sales, large-scale sales of assets. It will affect your investment portfolio. How you invest in climate change will affect your farmland investment portfolio over the next 5 to 10 years. And you can either be on the winning side or not. We recommend buying high quality farmland with water and water rights. There's also large opportunities to invest in infrastructure for harvest, packing, and distribution. When the climate shifts and the growing region shifts, you still need to pack that. Well, now you need new areas to pack those crops. Harvest them, distribute them around. So you need new transportation infrastructure. There's a lot of high value crops that are going to be moving. Investing in permanent crops can double or triple the investment per acre. And so there's going to be a lot of investment in that. A lot of breed development in terms of various adaptive traits as well. We don't think this is going to happen fast enough, but there are opportunities there from an investment perspective. And on the innovation side, probably the key area here is opportunities to mechanize. So large-scale mechanized harvest, weeding, cultivation. You can, for example, when we harvest blueberries, we were replacing about 100 with a mechanical harvester and 4 team members on that mechanical harvester. We can replace 125 hand harvesters there. And hand harvesting or field labor is going to have more issues in terms of heat as well as cost as the minimum wage continues to increase. Last slide, key takeaways. Food demand is inelastic. People need to eat. We've got 8 billion people to feed on the planet. The supply of farmland is decreasing, and the pressures on that farmland are increasing, not decreasing. So we expect to have continued secular trends with farmland decline, plus the impact of climate change, reducing farmable acres and moving the crops around. And there are opportunities to invest with foresight. The science is good enough. You just have to pick a scenario and invest with that. And you can be successful in this space and make a difference for humanity in the near future. Thank you for the quick take on climate change and farmland. We'll be doing additional webinars. We'd love your feedback. The ones that we're thinking about now are a topic on water, a topic on real regenerative agriculture, and an overview on farmland as an asset class, performance over time, different components of it, et cetera. We'd love you to reach out, and we'd love to hear from you about what you'd like to hear about.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. We have a couple of questions that came in. Reminder, if anybody else has any questions, to please click the icon at the bottom. The first says, are the orange groves being replanted in Florida? And do you expect that new pest-resistant varieties can or will be developed?
No and no. So what's happening is that even though production has fallen to less than 1/10 of where it was at its peak just 20 years ago, you have issues with hurricanes and pests and other things. But the main thing is that lack of frost is preventing people from replanting. You still have about the acreage has only decreased around half or so, So you have a lot of trees still planted there that are just not performing well. They're just not delivering the fruit. And you actually see increased production in California and other places. We think that the planting really is just going to move north, basically go where the citrus is more naturally adapted to that climate. Again, the climate is changing. The citrus trees are not happy there as much anymore because of the heat. They're not evolved for that climate.
Okay, thank you. Another one asks about your thoughts around, hold on one second, major crop impacts outside of the United States. It looks like I just muted myself. Apologies.
Very significant impacts outside the U.S. The U.S. actually is blessed with a tremendous amount of infrastructure. We have an amazing high quality farmland, great water resources. One thing we didn't talk about is the aquifers. You have certain areas that have aquifers that are depleting, and certain areas that aquifers are doing okay, and that adds to resilience. But the rest of the world typically is growing more lower value crops or doesn't have the crop insurance that the U.S. has or the investment resources. We do look at international opportunities. Cacao is important, coffee is important, but the investment cases are, can be challenging there. So yes, very significant impacts, but definitely beyond the scope of this, what we can cover in 30 minutes.
Okay, and one last question around what are the best practices that are good for minimizing carbon release?
Great. So the number one easiest thing is cover cropping. So planting a cover crop, what you see, it's only done on 3% of U.S. farmland today. So they'll grow their corn crop. So 53% of U.S. farmland grows two commodity crops, corn and soy. Most of that farmland is basically left barren all winter long. So they harvest the crop, and then you have really bad problems with soil runoff, and you lose carbon, et cetera. Planting cover crops is probably the best way of increasing soil carbon, adding soil fertility to the soil as well, increasing biodiversity, and it adds a little bit of cost per acre, which in our view, the government should fund through a check the box program. But that is by far the best way on a very large scale to sequester a lot of carbon, improve soil quality, and improve the resilience overall of our agriculture system.
Great. Thank you, Craig. Being cognizant of time, we thank everybody for joining us today. If you do have additional questions, please feel free to reach out, and we hope you'll join our webinar next quarter. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.